The Jedi Council meeting had ended, but Obi-Wan remained seated, staring into the emptiness of the room. There was something in the Force that invited him to stay, as if a silent call demanded his attention. He felt that this sensation did not come from any Jedi present in the temple, but from a distinct and intense presence, approaching like an echo from the future. The air seemed denser, and Obi-Wan closed his eyes for a moment, trying to understand the source of that disturbance. Then a calm, familiar voice broke the silence. "Hello there!" Surprised, he turned around, and before him appeared the translucent figure of an older Jedi, with a gray beard and deep marks on his face. Obi-Wan stood up immediately, his hand instinctively reaching for his lightsaber, although something inside him told him there was no danger. "Who are you?" he asked, trying to keep his tone steady. The ghost smiled slightly. "Well, at the moment I am the best friend you could have, and I come to bring you warnings, for the galaxy depends on it." Obi-Wan frowned, confused. "Warnings? What kind of warnings? And why do I feel like we've met before?" The specter took a step forward, light passing through his ethereal form, and replied, "Because we've met before, more than you realize. How good it is to see you like this, with all this vitality." "Those were good times," said the old Jedi, with a mixture of nostalgia and sadness. Obi-Wan approached, observing every detail of that figure. "Why do you say that? Have we met before?" The ghost looked up and said, "You still don't realize who I am. I am you, a few years from now. A man who lived to see the fall of the Jedi Council and the destruction of the Order." Obi-Wan took a step back, shaking his head. "That's impossible." But the grave tone and serious expression of the spirit showed that there was no lie in those words. "My name is Obi-Wan Kenobi, Jedi Master and member of the former Council. I survived the destruction of the Order, but not without carrying mistakes. Mistakes that you can still avoid," said the specter with a weight in his voice. Obi-Wan felt a chill upon hearing this, not only because of the revelation, but because of the intensity with which the message was conveyed. "And what mistakes would those be?" he asked, trying to maintain control. The ghost took a deep breath and replied, "The greatest of all was not understanding who Anakin really was, and what he needed to fulfill his destiny. Anakin is the chosen one, Obi-Wan. He is no ordinary Jedi. His power exceeds that of anyone who has ever walked among us. But along with that power comes a vulnerable heart and a mind in constant conflict," explained the elder, in a grave tone. "You have trained him well, but his training is incomplete. He needs more than your lessons. He needs to absorb the knowledge of the entire council, learn the skills and philosophies of each master. Only then can he bring balance to the Force." Obi-Wan remained silent, feeling those words pierce through any resistance he still had. "You speak as if he were in danger," Obi-Wan commented, trying to understand the urgency in the voice of his future self. "He is," replied the ghost, "and not just him, the entire galaxy. There is a shadow growing, and it knows Anakin's weaknesses well. If he is not ready, it will consume him." Obi-Wan felt the weight of those words and asked, "What exactly should I do?" The ghost tilted his head, looking him in the eye. "You must take him to the masters of the council. He needs to learn from Yoda, from Windu, not as an ordinary student, but as one who carries the destiny of us all. That is something the council may not accept immediately," said Obi-Wan, thinking of the resistance that some masters, especially Mace Windu, might offer. The ghost smiled slightly. "They will accept it, if you speak the truth. Yoda already senses the unusual strength in Anakin. Windu may not trust him, but he will respect the decision if he understands that this is the only chance of victory against what is to come." Obi-Wan reflected for a moment, then asked, "What if I fail?" The answer came quickly, "Then all will be lost. Not just the Order, but the light of the galaxy." Silence fell for a moment, and Obi-Wan realized that his heart was beating faster. "If I do this, how will we know if it works?" he asked. "You will know when you look at him and see not just a warrior, but a master of himself. When his fears no longer control his actions, and when his emotions are not currents, but wind beneath his wings. Obi-Wan nodded, absorbing every word. It was like receiving a map of the future with the exact marks to avoid tragedy. "There is one more thing you need to understand," said the ghost, approaching him. "You are not just his master. You are the guardian of his destiny. Your role is not to mold him in your image, but to guide him until he discovers his own form. The Anakin you train today is still unstable, but the Anakin who must exist will be able to face the darkness without losing himself in it." Obi-Wan looked at the ground, feeling the weight of responsibility grow on his shoulders. "What if he doesn't want to follow that path?" he asked, looking up. The ghost sighed. "He will, if you show him you believe in him. He has always struggled to prove his worth, but what he really needs is someone who can see beyond his flaws and recognize his greatness even before he proves it." Obi-Wan felt a tightness in his chest, thinking about how he had demanded so much from Anakin but rarely acknowledged what he had already achieved. "I'll do whatever it takes," Obi-Wan said at last, determination rising in his voice. The ghost smiled, and for a moment, the sadness in his eyes gave way to a glimmer of hope. "Then there's still a chance, and maybe this time the story will be different." Obi-Wan took a breath and broke the silence. "If I am you in the future, then you know exactly where I failed. Tell me clearly, please." The ghost nodded compassionately. "Very well. Let's start with the obvious. You treated Anakin like an ordinary knight for too long, demanding the same mold you used for yourself. He doesn't fit that mold, Obi-Wan." The younger man frowned. "Discipline is necessary?" "Yes," replied the older man. "But discipline without a place for the heart to speak becomes iron in the wrong fire. Anakin needed explicit emotional education from an early age, and you preferred virtuous silence," continued old Kenobi, his voice firm. "He drowns in what he does not name. Fear of loss, guilt, anger at injustices he has witnessed, love that does not know where to land. You taught him to defend the Republic, but you rarely taught him to defend his own mind." Obi-Wan lowered his gaze, acknowledging the uncomfortable truth. "I tried to keep him stable by example." "Example is light, but sometimes light blinds," said the ghost. "He needed constant dialogue, direct questions, a master who would face his ghosts with him." "What about the missions?" asked Obi-Wan, seeking solid ground. "I put Anakin where he would shine, on the front lines." The old man smiled sadly. "Therein lies another flaw. Brilliance without examined shadow becomes fire. You sent him too early and too soon into battle, reinforcing that courage and victory came from the saber, not from listening inwardly." Obi-Wan clenched his hands. "So you want me to remove him from the battlefields?" "I want you to rebalance him," replied Ben. "Fewer external fronts, more internal fronts. If he continues to win on the outside and lose on the inside, the price will come with interest." "There is also the matter of the council," Ben continued, pacing as if reviewing memories. "Anakin respects it, but does not feel part of it. You could have been the bridge, and often you were the gate." Obi-Wan stood up, touched by the fair accusation. "I feared the judgment of some masters." "And he feared your silence," replied the spirit. "Take him to Yoda, to the ear that hears what is not said. To Windu for the law that does not bend, but learns to bend the lightning." Obi-Wan hesitated and touched on the subject that burned secretly within him. "What about Anakin's attachments? I know something consumes him, but he doesn't tell me everything." Old Kenobi pressed his lips together before answering. "The time has come for you to speak sooner. Tell him that the Force is not the enemy of love, but of its masks. If there is someone in his heart, bring the subject to light instead of threatening with shadow. Honesty will be the bridge that will prevent the abyss." Obi-Wan looked up. "What if I lose him by revealing too much?" "You will lose him if you continue to pretend you don't see," said Ben, without harshness, only truth. "Palpatine?" whispered Obi-Wan, as if naming a poison. "I feel that he courts you with praise, access, and secrets." The spirit nodded solemnly. "He offers what you have withheld. Recognition, listening, the promise of useful power. Steal his monopoly on listening. Sit down with Anakin. Ask for his version of events, discuss politics, strategy, ethics. If you are not the chosen one's main interlocutor, someone else will be. Obi-Wan walked to the center of the room. I'll bring him into my readings, my maps, my analyses of the Senate. And your mistakes, Ben added. Tell him when you failed, too. He trusts those who bleed with him. We have discussed mind and heart. Now let us discuss lightsabers, said Ben, and the words seemed to ignite sparks of memories of duels. You have refined Sorisu to defensive excellence, but it requires conscious transitions between forms. With Yoda, you will relearn Ataru without recklessness, a leap that listens to the ground. With Windu, you will understand Vapad not as an invitation to fury, but as a mirror where the lightning tires and returns. And with you, Obi-Wan, Sorisu as shelter, not as prison. Obi-Wan ran his hand over his chin. I will do short but constant sessions, stitching the passages between the forms. Establish daily rituals, continued the elder. Morning of silence and breathing, afternoon of study and debate, evening of emotional reporting. No more reports just on the mission, but on your internal state. Obi-Wan agreed. I'll include metrics, frequency of impulses, anxiety triggers, recovery after frustration. Ben smiled. You've always been good with structures. Use them in favor of what you avoided naming. Obi-Wan replied, What if he refuses this transparency? Offer yours first, said the spirit. Say, I also fail, and today I failed here, here, and here. Trust learns by imitation. I want you to tell me clearly, what is the first step when I walk out this door? Obi-Wan asked, feeling the urgency turn into a plan. 3 actions, Ben replied, raising a finger for each one. First, call Anakin in for a frank conversation today and tell him what you just told me. Second, go to Yoda and propose the intensive with clear dates and objectives. Third, schedule a preliminary instruction with Windu on the limits of Vapad, so that Anakin hears it as science, not seduction. Obi-Wan breathed and nodded. I'll do that. One question that won't go away, said Obi-Wan, looking at his own reflection in the glass. If I were you, at what point did I start to lose my student? Ben was slow to answer. The moment you confused obedience with trust. Obedience fears and remains silent. Trust speaks and remains. You can have an obedient and distant Anakin, or a sincere and present Anakin. Only one of them will cross the shadow. Obi-Wan pressed his lips together, as if recording an invisible oath. Then I choose presence, even if it hurts. The ghost approached until he could almost touch the younger man's shoulder. Tell him he doesn't have to prove anything to you, he advised. Say, I already see who you are, and my job is to help you see it too. When he believes that, Palpatine will seem smaller. Obi-Wan let out a slight, incredulously hopeful laugh. I never thought I'd hear myself say that. It's the privilege of age, Ben replied with affectionate irony, and the price of mistakes that have hurt enough. Ben, what if, even with all that, there's a fall? Obi-Wan asked in a whisper. Old Kenobi held his gaze. Then you will be by his side in the fall to turn the ground into a springboard. But don't anticipate the precipice. Anticipate the bridges. Obi-Wan straightened up, regaining the posture of a master that he now knew he was also learning. All right, I'll go to Yoda first. Tell him, mind that quiets, sword that guides. He will understand, said Ben with a half-smile. And when Anakin is ready for Windu, prepare the ground with clear words about risk and purpose. Thank you, said Obi-Wan, and the gratitude had a new tone, less formal, more human. Don't thank me yet, replied the spirit. Thank me when you look into Anakin's eyes and hear him say, I am ready, Master. On that day, the Force will breathe a sigh of relief. Obi-Wan turned toward the door, determined. I'm going to find him now. Take these words with you, Ben added, slowly disappearing like mist at dawn. You are not educating a soldier. You are awakening a guardian. The room fell silent. but the plan pulsed like a comet on a steady course, asking only that the journey begin before the shadow grew longer another night. The corridor leading to Yoda's meditation room was silent, and Obi-Wan walked with steady steps, but his mind was filled with thoughts about everything he had discussed with his elder self. Upon entering, he saw the master sitting motionless, as if he were part of the floor itself. Before he could speak, Yoda opened one eye and said, "Come with something heavy on your heart, you." Obi-Wan bowed his head. "Yes, master. I need Anakin to undergo intensive training with you, something beyond what he has received so far." Yoda frowned slightly and replied, "More than a knight he already is. Why as an apprentice treat him we must." Obi-Wan took a breath and approached him. "Because he is the chosen one, and it is not enough to be a great warrior. He must master himself more than any Jedi before him. I know, that if he does not, we will lose him." Yoda closed both eyes, absorbing the words, and then spoke calmly. "Visions of the future you had?" Obi-Wan hesitated, remembering Ben's recommendation. "They are not visions, but a warning, and I do not intend to ignore it." Yoda rested his hands on his staff. Then, "Listen, I must. Intensive training with him I will have. But no, I need that ready for it, he is." Anakin was called, and upon entering the room, he bowed slightly before Yoda. "Master Yoda," Master Obi-Wan said, "I have something special to learn from you." The Green Master watched him silently for a few seconds before replying, "Special, everything is, if with attention seen is. But here, more than fighting, you will learn. Here, listening to silence, you will learn." Anakin raised his eyebrow, confused. "Listen to silence?" Yoda smiled. "The sound of the Force it is." Obi-Wan remained silent, allowing the dialogue to flow naturally. The training began in the quiet courtyard of the temple at dawn. Yoda had Anakin sit cross-legged, eyes closed, hands on his knees. The body is a river. The mind is the sky. The Force is the wind that dances between them. Anakin tried to relax, but his impatience grew. "With all due respect, Master Yoda, I don't understand how this helps me win a battle." Yoda did not open his eyes, but simply replied, "To win is not always to fight. If you win within, victory outside is." Obi-Wan, watching from afar, saw how Anakin still had difficulty accepting exercises that were not physical or immediate. In the following days, the training became more rigorous. Yoda made him spend hours walking slowly through the gardens, feeling each step, as if the world around him existed only in that moment. Then he had him face training droids blindfolded, using only his intuition to block blows. "See with the eyes of the mind you must," he said. Anakin began to realize that he was no longer reacting solely on raw instinct, but on a broader perception, as if anticipating the movement before it came. Obi-Wan noticed the change and understood that something was working. One morning, Yoda decided to test Anakin's emotional control. He placed him in front of a hollow record of traumatic moments from the Clone Wars, scenes of destruction and loss that Anakin had experienced. "Look, you must, but in looking, do not drown." The young Jedi took a deep breath and stood firm, but the Master noticed the tension in his muscles and breathing. "Accept the pain without being its slave, you must." Anakin closed his eyes and tried to follow the advice. When he opened them again, the anger had subsided. Yoda nodded slightly, satisfied. Another exercise consisted of taking him to a dark room, where Yoda, hidden, threw small objects into the air. Anakin had to intercept them without knowing where they would come from, using only the Force to sense their movement. "Flow with the unpredictable, you must," he explained. After countless failed attempts, Anakin began to get it right more and more until, in the end, he was intercepting the objects before they were even thrown. "Now, the Force does not follow you. You follow the Force," said Yoda. In one of the last sessions of the intensive training, Yoda led Anakin to the top of one of the temple towers, where he could see all of Coruscant. "Great is your power, young Skywalker. Greater still is your fear. Control one, control the other is." Anakin looked at the city, thoughtful. "I always feel I need to protect everything and everyone." Yoda shook his head. Protection is not control. Letting go is part of protecting. Obi-Wan, who was watching silently, saw Anakin absorb those words as if he were guarding something precious. The final test came in the form of a duel with Yoda, using only Form 4, Ataru. The Green Master leaped and spun with incredible precision, and Anakin had to control his impetus so as not to expose himself. After long weeks, he managed to predict one of Yoda's moves and neutralize the attack. The Master smiled. Ready for the next step, he is. Anakin smiled back, feeling that he had achieved something more important than physical strength: serenity in combat. When the training came to an end, Yoda took Obi-Wan aside. More centered he is, but vigilant he must remain. With other masters, he will learn what he lacks. Obi-Wan nodded. Yes, Master. Now it is time to take him to Windu. Yoda looked at Anakin one last time and concluded, chosen he is, but only chosen will he remain, if he chooses the right path. And so, the next chapter of training was about to begin. The meeting with Mace Windu was scheduled in the Council's training room, where the Master was already waiting with his lightsaber attached to his belt. Upon seeing Anakin enter accompanied by Obi-Wan, Windu got straight to the point. I hear Yoda considers you more centered now. That's good, because what I'm going to teach you requires absolute balance. Anakin crossed his arms, curious. And what exactly is it? Windu took a step forward. Vapad, a form of combat that borders on darkness, but transforms that energy into light. Very few can master it without falling. Obi-Wan remained close but silent, remembering the advice of his older self. Let each master lead the process. Windu approached Anakin and stared at him intently. Don't think it's just another fighting style. Vapad is a mirror. It doesn't hide your anger, but forces it to reveal itself, and you will have to control it with every movement, or it will control you. Anakin lifted his chin. I'm not afraid of that. Windu bowed slightly. That's the first sign that you need to be careful. Those who do not fear falling fall faster. The training began with breathing and posture exercises. Windu forced Anakin to perform circular movements with his saber, alternating between attacks and defenses at unusual angles, while the Master provoked him with words that sought to arouse emotional reactions. You are fast but impulsive, strong but predictable. Anakin, irritated, tried to pick up the pace, and it was at that moment that Windu cut off his offensive with a simple step backward. See? Your anger opens the way for the enemy. Vapad is not about attacking faster. It's about attacking more accurately. In the following days, Windu intensified the training. Anakin was pitted against multiple advanced droids, all programmed to respond to emotional patterns detected in his posture and breathing. When he became impatient, the droids changed their strategy and cornered him. When he maintained control, he was able to defeat them effortlessly. That's it, said Windu. Vapad channels the opponent's energy and returns it. But it only works if you are a stable conductor. An unstable conductor explodes along with the charge. One afternoon, Windu decided to show Vapad in its purest form. He turned on his purple saber and invited Anakin to a duel. Attack me with everything you've got. The young Jedi advanced with force, alternating forms he had learned from Yoda and Obi-Wan, but Windu absorbed each blow, spinning and returning the energy in precise counterattacks. In the middle of the fight, Anakin realized something. The feeling was not one of facing resistance, but of fighting against a whirlwind that returned each attack. Do you understand now? Asked Windu, pausing for a moment. Vapad doesn't just block. It returns the enemy's own intent against them. There were also moments of conversation outside of training. In one of them, Windu spoke more seriously. Anakin, I know there is something inside you that worries you. I don't need to know the details, but I need you to understand. Vapad will not erase it. It will reveal it. It's up to you to decide what to do with what you see. Anakin was silent for a few seconds before replying, So, if I master this, nothing can defeat me? Windu shook his head. If you master it, you won't have to worry about defeat. The enemy is just a circumstance. Your greatest battle is always against yourself. Another stage of training involved dealing with surprise attacks. Windu, without warning, would launch activated training droids into corridors or rooms, forcing Anakin to enter the Vapad state of mind instantly. At first, the young man reacted with raw aggression, but gradually he began to transform the adrenaline rush into controlled fluidity. "Now you're beginning to understand," Windu said. "When you learn to transmute this in any situation, you will be ready to face even those who use the Force in a dark way." In a night session, Windu brought Anakin to an isolated area of the temple and, without explanation, activated his saber. "Last test. I will use everything I have against you, including techniques to provoke your anger. If you give in, you lose. If you channel it, you win." The fight was intense, with blows echoing in the open space. At various moments, Anakin was on the verge of getting angry, but he remembered Yoda's words and controlled his breathing. In the end, he disarmed Windu with a move that combined Vapad and Sorisu. The master smiled slightly. "You are ready." When the training period ended, Windu called Obi-Wan and spoke in a low voice. He managed to stay focused. He still carries too much fire, but now he knows where to put it. Obi-Wan nodded. "That will be vital for what lies ahead." Anakin approached, overhearing part of the conversation. "What lies ahead?" Windu looked at him and said only, "The final test does not take place on the training ground. It comes when the choice between light and darkness presents itself. And for you, Anakin, that time is near." As he left the room, Obi-Wan noticed that Anakin was different. His gaze had the same intensity, but there was something calmer in his posture, as if his energy was now under control, waiting for the right moment to act. He knew that the next challenge would not just be a lesson, but the decisive confrontation that could change the fate of the galaxy. The corridor leading to Palpatine's office was silent, except for the sound of Anakin's boots echoing on the floor. The young Jedi walked with steady steps, but inside him was a calmness he had never felt before. He had trained with Yoda and Windu, mastered Vapad, and learned to listen to the Force before acting. When he entered the large hall, he found the Chancellor looking out the window, as if admiring Coruscant. "Anakin," Palpatine said without turning around, "there are truths that the Council will never tell you, but I will." Anakin stood still in the center of the room, watching the man's every move. "And what truths would those be?" Palpatine turned slowly, a cold smile on his lips. "I am the Sith Lord you seek. The power you feel in me is what can save those you love. I can teach you to avoid death, to create a future where no one can take you away from them." Anakin's gaze did not waver. "So it's true. You are the enemy who has been manipulating this war from the beginning." The Sith took a few steps, maintaining his seductive tone. "Enemy? No, Anakin. I am the solution. The Jedi fear your power. I do not. With me, you will have no limits." Anakin shook his head, his voice firm. "You no longer have power over me. I know what you are, and I know what I must do." Palpatine raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Are you going to kill me? Just like that, without considering what you could gain?" Anakin replied, "I'm going to arrest you, but if you resist, I'll have no choice." Palpatine's smile disappeared, and suddenly the room filled with the sound of the red lightsaber igniting. "So be it," said the Sith, advancing with deadly speed. Anakin activated his blue lightsaber and assumed the defensive Sorisu stance, absorbing the initial attacks and studying his enemy's rhythm. Palpatine attacked with fury and precision, trying to force the young man to react impulsively, but Anakin maintained control, guided by the calmness Yoda had taught him. When he saw an opening, Anakin switched to Ataru, jumping and pressing Palpatine with quick, unpredictable attacks. The Sith took a few steps back, surprised by his opponent's speed and balance. "I see your masters have done a good job, but not well enough," Palpatine said, before unleashing an intense burst of Force lightning. Anakin raised his saber and absorbed the impact, feeling the energy vibrate, but instead of resisting with brute force, he let the Vapad flow. Windu's technique transformed Palpatine's electrical fury into a controlled flow. Anakin spun his saber, redirecting some of the energy to the ground and accumulating the rest until he found the right moment. "Surprised?" he asked, as he returned a counterattack that sent the Sith reeling backward. Palpatine growled, increasing the intensity of the lightning bolts, but that only fueled the young Jedi's technique. In one swift motion, Anakin advanced, closing the distance between them and forcing Palpatine to interrupt the lightning bolts to defend himself with his lightsaber. The duel became a whirlwind of blades and sparks, each blow accompanied by a tense exchange of glances. Anakin no longer saw a leader, but a manipulator who had tried to poison his spirit for years. Each attack was now precise, driven not by anger, but by duty. At a decisive moment, Palpatine attempted a treacherous blow, directing energy bolts directly at Anakin's face. But the Jedi twisted his body, absorbed the attack with his lightsaber, and returned all the accumulated energy back to his attacker. The Sith's scream echoed through the hall as the force of the impact threw him against the wall. The red saber fell from his hand, and Palpatine's body lay motionless on the floor, defeated. Anakin turned off his saber, feeling his breathing steady and his mind calm. "It's done," he said when Obi-Wan entered the room, drawn by the sound of combat. "No hatred, no anger," added the young man, as if speaking more to himself than to his friend. Obi-Wan nodded, seeing that this time, the Chosen One had won completely. "So the war is over," said the Master, and for the first time in a long time he believed it. A few weeks later, the Jedi Council granted Anakin the title of Master. Padme, at his side, gave birth to Luke and Leia safely, and together they decided to raise them with love and discipline. Anakin reformed the Order, guiding it toward a balance between heart and reason. The darkness had been defeated not only because the Sith had fallen, but because Anakin Skywalker had finally won the battle within himself.